Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to Badasses of History. Just as a quick reminder, wherever you are listening to this podcast, just wanted to let you know that it's also available everywhere. So that's Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you get your podcasts, I'm on it now. So, make sure to tell your friends about it. Enjoy the story of Mauro Prosperi. In 1955, in a little town in Rome, a badass was born. His name was Mauro Prosperi, and from here on out, we will refer to him as Mario because it's awesome. Mario is a police officer and a pentathlete, which just means he's really in shape and can run a marathon without getting his heart rate up. One day, whilst protecting the Italian streets, he stumbled upon an article depicting a race in the Sahara Desert that was so extreme you had to sign a waiver on where to ship your body if you died. The Sahara Marathon is definitely insane. It's a 6-day ultra marathon covering 156 miles of hot sand. There are checkpoints in which you can have water, but only a certain amount. If you drink more than allowed, you take a time penalty. For whatever reason, they want you to be dehydrated. This all sounded like fun to Mario, so he began training. He ran every morning, a measly 25 miles. He also began to dehydrate himself on purpose so he could get used to the feeling. I guess the feeling of dying is exhilarating. A few months later, in 1994, Mario flew to Morocco to join the other 193 participants at the starting line. The first 3 days went as expected, and Mario was feeling quite confident. The fourth day, however, was a 57-mile stretch between checkpoints, without a single person in sight, and the temperature had just reached 115 degrees. To make matters worse, a sandstorm appeared out of nowhere and forced the competition to pause for a day. All the competitors made it to the campsite to wait out the storm, but Mario was nowhere to be found. The following morning, rescue parties were sent out and a search for him, but the helicopters frantically scanned the desert floor to no avail. Mario was gone. See, he was in 7th place, so when the storm started, he just kept his head down and kept following the trail. When it got dark, however, Mario veered off the path. A few hours later, when he realized what had happened, it was too dark and too late to correct his course. The course instructors said if anyone was to get lost, that they were to stay put and wait for rescue. So, that's what Mario did for the first day. He waited on a sand dune for 24 hours, and a helicopter eventually flew right over him and disappeared in the desert sky. That's when Mario decided, hey, I got a compass and a map. I'll just do it myself. How hard could it be? After a few hours, he realized this wasn't working out, and he was dangerously low on water, so he decided to stop at an abandoned shrine that just so happened to be in the middle of the desert. After a day, Mario had completely run out of water, and he was very low on food. He resorted to sucking the moisture from his wet wipes, licking morning dew off of the rocks, and drinking his own urine. Once his food supplies were completely diminished, he started catching bird eggs, beetles, bats, and lizards, and sucking any moisture from them that he could get. A few days had gone by, and another plane flies overhead. Mario lit a fire and spelled SOS in the sand, but the plane just kept on going. It was at this moment that Mario became hysterical, and decided he couldn't take it anymore. He pulled out his pocket knife, sat down with his back against the shrine, and slit his wrists. He leaned his head back, closed his eyes, and waited for death. After a few moments, and being quite confused, Mario looked down at his wrists and realized his dehydration had thickened his blood so much that it coagulated and he was physically incapable of bleeding out. Upon this realization, Mario decided if he's going to die trying. So, off he went again. He traveled in the mornings and evenings, avoiding the heat of the day, and headed for the mountains he could see in the distance. Along the way, he would pass dried-up riverbeds. He would squeeze the roots of plants he would come across to get just a few drops of water. As he walked, he left pieces of his gear behind, hoping it might be a trail for others used to follow him. It wasn't. After 8 days in the desert, Mario stumbled upon a desert oasis. Shaded trees, lush landscape, and a big pool of water. He threw himself in the pool and forced his now seized throat to swallow a mouthful of water. He immediately vomited. His body was so empty of any nourishment that it was actually rejecting it. Mauro had to take tiny sips every 10 minutes or so to keep any water down. After a few hours, his body was hydrated again. He filled up his water container and took off. A few hours later, Mauro found some goat droppings. They left a sort of poopy trail up a sand dune, and he followed them a ways until it led him to a little 8-year-old nomad girl herding goats. He ran up to her and begged for help. Before long, her nomadic caravan got him some goat's milk, put him on a camel, and brought him to the nearest village. The village authorities took him to the hospital, and there he would find out the extent of what just happened. Mauro was stranded in the desert for 9 days. He had walked 180 miles off course and actually ended up in Albania. He had lost 35 pounds, his liver was almost completely destroyed, and he needed 16 liters of fluids. He was eventually reunited with his family and returned to Italy. Now, there are quite a few critics who say this entire thing is made up, that it's physically impossible for him to have done this, that he would have died long before day 8, and that he made it all up for notoriety and money. So let's put that to bed right now. In 9 days, Mauro really did lose 35 pounds, and his body was absolutely destroyed. If he did that to himself on purpose, that's really disturbing. It took months for him to be able to eat solid foods without vomiting. He had a noticeable scar on his wrist from where he attempted suicide. The shrine he had stayed at was located and confirmed to have bat skeletons and miscellaneous gear from Mario's pack. So it is confirmed that while some of his choices should have killed him even sooner, Mauro not only survived, but he beat the race against the Sahara Desert. All right, that's it for this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Next week is going to be an episode that is definitely going to be different. So you should give it a listen, because I loved it. But it's not really the same kind of platform that you're used to. Anyway, as always, tell your friends. Thanks.